The Whiskey War. History's most polite conflict. Did you know that Canada and Denmark fought a 40-year war, using only flags and bottles of alcohol? This was the famous Whiskey War, a peaceful dispute over Hans Island, a completely barren and uninhabited rock in the Arctic. The conflict began in 1984. Whenever the Canadian military visited the island, they would lower the Danish flag, raise their own, and bury a bottle of Canadian whiskey. Months later, Danish sailors would arrive, tear down the Canadian flag, hoist the Danish one, and leave a bottle of Copenhagen schnapps with a note saying, "Welcome to the Danish island." This hilarious ritual repeated for decades without a single shot ever being fired. Finally, in June 2022, both nations signed a treaty to officially split the tiny island in half. This peaceful resolution actually gave Canada its very first land border with Europe, ending history's most light-hearted border dispute. The Paragel Island Crisis. 2000 to the Paragel Island Crisis was a brief, bloodless military standoff between Spain and Morocco in July 2000. The conflict began on July 11th, when a group of Moroccan Royal Cadets occupied the tiny, uninhabited island of Paragel, located just 250 meters off the Moroccan coast. Morocco claimed they were setting up an observation post to monitor illegal immigration and smuggling. However, Spain viewed this as a violation of its sovereignty and a breach of the status quo. Tensions escalated rapidly over the next few days. Diplomatic talks failed, and both nations deployed warships to the area. On July 17th, Spain launched Operation Romeo Sierra. Spanish special forces, supported by helicopters and Navy vessels, raided the island. They quickly detained the Moroccan cadets without firing a single shot or causing any casualties. The standoff ended a few days later through U.S. mediation. Both countries agreed to withdraw their forces and restore the island to its original status as a demilitarized neutral zone. 1. The fight begins June 2017. The cut. Saudi Arabia and its allies suddenly closed all borders with Qatar. Ref 1. The reason. They blamed Qatar for supporting terrorism and being friendly with Iran. The ultimatum. They gave Qatar 13 hard demands, like closing the Al Jazeera TV channel. Qatar said no. 2. The Camel Crisis. Summer 2017. The eviction. Saudi Arabia ordered 9,000 Qatari camels to leave the country in 36 hours. The reason. Qatar is small, so its camels had always used Saudi grass fields. The tragedy. Many camels died of thirst in the hot desert border. The rescue. Qatar quickly built emergency camps with water and food to save them. 3. The beauty contest. December 2017. The show. Qatari camels still took part in a big Saudi beauty contest and won. The ban. Saudi judges disqualified them right after the excuse. They claimed Qatar used Botox on camels, but it was just political revenge. 4. How Qatar survived 017 no food. Qatar lost its only land route for food imports. The solution. They brought food by planes from Turkey and Iran. The cows. They even flew in thousands of live cows on planes to make their own milk. 5. Making peace. January 2021. The end. The countries signed a peace deal at the Al-Ula summit. The result. The blockade ended, borders opened, and camels went back to Saudi pastures. The Google Maps invasion. The 2010 Isla Calero dispute. In October 2010, an incredible international crisis unfolded between Costa Rica and Nicaragua over a small wetland territory called Isla Calero. Nicaraguan troops crossed the border, cleared protected rainforest, and set up a military camp on Costa Rican soil. When Costa Rica protested this violation of its sovereignty, the Nicaraguan commander gave an astonishing defense. He blamed Google Maps. He claimed that according to the digital map, the territory belonged to Nicaragua, and he was simply following his phone's navigation. Google quickly admitted to a 2.7-kilometer error caused by a flawed data source from the U.S. State Department and corrected the border lines. Despite the tech giant's correction, the diplomatic standoff lasted for years, with Costa Rica taking the case to the International Court of Justice. Ultimately, in 2015, the UN court ruled unanimously in favor of Costa Rica, ordering Nicaragua to withdraw its troops and pay damages. proving that international borders are still defined by historic treaties, not software algorithms. In 2018, Russia's internet regulator Roskomnadzor launched a war against Pavel Durov's Telegram that accidentally broke the RUNET. When Russia demanded Telegram's encryption keys, Durov refused, triggering an official ban. Telegram successfully evaded censorship by constantly switching IP addresses and hiding its traffic inside Amazon Web Services Oz and Google Cloud servers. To stop it, Roskomnadzor resorted to carpet bombing, blocking up to 20 million IP addresses at once. While Telegram kept working without a VPN, the massive collateral damage crippled Russian digital infrastructure. Supermarket checkout systems froze, online banking crashed, food deliveries stopped, and smart home networks, university websites, and rival apps like Viber went completely offline. This chaotic digital showdown lasted for 2 years until the government officially surrendered and lifted the ban in June 2020. Storm Area 51. They Can't Stop All of Us was a viral internet meme that turned into a global cultural phenomenon in September 2019. It started as a joke Facebook event created by Maddie Roberts, who jokingly suggested storming the classified US Air Force Base in Nevada to see aliens. More than 2 million people RSVP'd to the event, prompting official warnings from the US military. On the day of the raid, September 20th, 2019, only a few thousand people actually showed up. Instead of a violent break-in, the gathering turned into a peaceful, alien-themed festival with costumes and music. The Wikipedia War. Turkey's 3-year blackout to 017 to 020 in April 2017. The Turkish government completely blocked Wikipedia for all 80 million of its citizens. The massive diplomatic and digital war started over just 2 lines in an English article. The text alleged that Turkey was sponsoring jihadist terrorist groups in the Syrian civil war, including Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Instead of submitting counter-arguments or editing the open-source platform with reliable sources, Ankara demanded the immediate deletion of the content. The Wikimedia Foundation firmly refused, stating they would not censor independent information or bow to state dictates. In response, Turkey used its Internet Act to implement a total blanket ban on all language versions of the website. For nearly 3 years, millions of Turkish students, academics, and citizens were cut off from the world's largest encyclopedia. The Wikimedia Foundation fought back legally, taking the case all the way to Turkey's Constitutional Court and the European Court of Human Rights. Finally, in December 2019, the Constitutional Court ruled 10-6 that the blanket ban was unconstitutional and violated freedom of expression. On January 15, 2020, the historic block was officially lifted, proving that trying to censor the global internet through brute force is a losing battle. The Eritrean-Ethiopian War. 1998-2000. A fight between 2 bald men over a comb. The tragic absurdity. This conflict is considered one of the most senseless and devastating wars at the turn of the 21st century. 2 of the world's poorest nations spent hundreds of millions of dollars and sacrificed around 100,000 human lives just to gain control over Badme, a god-forsaken, desolate border village surrounded by rocky desert with absolutely zero resources or strategic value. A Western diplomat famously and brutally summarized this mutual slaughter as 2 bald men fighting over a comb, while millions of their own citizens were literally starving due to severe famine and extreme poverty. Both governments chose to prioritize a massive arms race. They emptied their state budgets to purchase advanced Russian military hardware, including Su-27 and MiG-29 fighter jets, and even hired foreign mercenary pilots to orchestrate modern dogfights. At the same time, on the ground, they utilized horrifying World War I-style tactics, sending massive human waves of poorly trained conscripts directly into minefields and heavy artillery fire. The ultimate peak of this absurdity occurred in 2018. After nearly 2 decades of frozen conflict and pointless hostility, the Ethiopian government simply signed a peace treaty and officially handed the disputed village over to Eritrea, openly admitting that the entire bloody war and the loss of 100,000 lives had been completely meaningless. The bombardment of Yeonpyeong 2010, an artillery duel over test shells the tragic absurdity. In November 2010, the world stood on the brink of a new full-scale Korean War due to a catastrophic misinterpretation of routine military exercises. South Korean forces were conducting standard, pre-announced artillery drills on Yeonpyeong Island. All of their test shells were fired safely south, directly into the open ocean, well away from North Korea. However, the North Korean regime chose to interpret these training maneuvers as a direct attack on their sovereign waters. Without hesitation, North Korea launched a massive, sudden artillery barrage targeting the inhabited island. Dozens of rocket shells rained down on military installations and civilian homes, killing to soldiers and to civilians while reducing neighborhoods to rubble. This reckless overreaction escalated into a terrifying international crisis, proving how easily a simple training drill can morph into actual bloodshed when paranoia takes over. The 2013 Lahad-2 standoff, a modern war over a forgotten rent-bilhi tragic absurdity. In 2013, a terrifying military conflict involving modern fighter jets, elite special forces, and heavy artillery erupted between Malaysia and an armed militia over a forgotten 19th-century colonial lease agreement. A self-proclaimed sultan from the Philippines gathered a private army of 200 followers and launched a seafaring invasion of the Lahad-2 district in Malaysia. Their bizarre and literal demand: they wanted Malaysia to resume paying an annual symbolic rent for the land, which had been halted due to a ridiculous bureaucratic oversight and a breakdown in communication. What started as a financial dispute quickly escalated into terrifying bloodshed. The Malaysian government refused to negotiate with what they viewed as armed insurgents, threatening their national sovereignty. They launched Operation Sovereignty, using military aircraft to bomb the militants' hideouts before deploying elite ground troops to clear the area. By the time the smoke cleared, over 70 people were dead, including several police commandos. A tragic, violent war was fought in the 21st century, all because politicians and accountants failed to sort out an archaic lease bill through peaceful diplomacy. The 2020 Galwan Valley clash, nuclear superpowers fighting with stones and clubs, the tragic absurdity. In June 2020, two nuclear-armed superpowers with access to space technology and advanced stealth fighters engaged in a deadly combat using Stone Age weapons. The clash occurred in the freezing Galwan Valley along the disputed Himalayan border, due to a long-standing bilateral agreement signed in 1993. Firearms and explosives were strictly banned near the line of control to prevent accidental military escalation. When a trivial, stubborn dispute over a temporary border tent erupted, hundreds of elite Chinese and Indian soldiers clashed in a brutal, medieval melee brawl, armed only with rocks, wooden clubs wrapped in barbed wire, and iron rods studded with nails. The troops fought for hours in pitch-black darkness. At least 20 Indian and Chinese soldiers died, not from bullet wounds, but from severe physical trauma or by falling off narrow cliff edges into the freezing river below. It remains a terrifying reminder that even in the 21st century, human conflict can reduce the world's most advanced militaries to primitive savagery.